Well, Whistle Watchers, how are you? And welcome to a brand new Whistle Watch podcast with me, Nigel Owens.
And me, Jamie Roberts. Now, each week, me and Nigel will be chatting to someone who's in a high-pressure job, hearing their experience and strategies about overcoming high pressure and how they deal with that in their environment.
And our first guest is 3 Grand Slam championships, 2 Lions Tour.
2 Grand Slams, right? 3 Six Nations.
3 Six Nations, not 3 Grand Slams.
No.
Okay. Our first guest is 3 Six Nations championships, 2 Lions Tour, one of the tournament as well, I believe, back in 2009, if I'm right.
Correct.
And now a junior doctor.
Resident, they call them.
Or resident doctor.
Resident, now. Junior's
What does that mean then?
Junior's condescending. So they call them resident. It's quite American.
Oh, is it?
I think so, yeah.
So what does it mean? Tell
It
me about
means
your
I am in my
job.
first year here in Llandoch until December, then I move over to the Heath as a resident doctor. So I graduated a long time ago, Nigel, 2013. Sat my exams in Cardiff, 8 years in medical school alongside my playing career. Sat my exams in that week we beat England, remember that game? 3 points to 3, that was a good day. And then I didn't work as a doc. So I graduated, left it behind. Obviously my rugby career went on for another 9 years. And I retired in the summer of 2022 and here I am. I sat an exam to come back in. And I was up in Manchester last November and passed it and started work here in August as a doctor.
So playing rugby for Wales, probably I think different probably than any other country in the world, but maybe New Zealand, maybe South Africa, the pressure in that goldfish bowl, so the weight of the world is on your shoulders when you're playing for Wales. It's going well, it's great. If it's not, it's difficult. Yeah. So what are the pressures like being a doctor? Are they very similar? What are the different challenges?
Yeah, I think they're different. Obviously you haven't got the eyes of the world watching you or 70,000 people in a stadium. However, the consequences of getting it wrong are arguably greater. You get something wrong on a rugby field, okay, you're letting your teammates down, you're letting yourself down, you're letting the fans down. But I guess when you get something wrong in this setting, it's compromising someone's health, right? So the stakes are arguably higher, and that brings with it pressure, of course. I think most doctors would agree with that. Certainly from my experiences, I've only been in the job 3 months, so it's not lost on you, your position of responsibility and how high the stakes are, because ultimately it's someone's health, right? So if that was your health, you'd expect good decision making and safe decision making around your care. So yeah, the pressures are different, but there are quite a lot of similarities. Yeah, just around like the team and that ability to bounce things off people.
I was supporting. Clive Norling, when I started refereeing, he was coaching for a while, and Clive Norling said to me, he said, a referee's got a more difficult job than a surgeon. And I said, what do you mean by that then? Because, well, when a surgeon is doing a life-saving operation, he's got time to most of the time, to make a decision, ask somebody, for help or to do this and that. When you're a referee, you've got to make the split-second decision on the pitch. Maybe it's different now because you've got the TMO and assistant referees. There's plenty of people helping make a decision. But I suppose as a doctor then, when you're making those decisions, you've got a bit more time, I guess. You can hang on, let me have a think about this. I need to double check something. Whereas when you're on the field making a decision of, do I go for this player or not? Do I go low for this tackle? Do I go high? There's no time to so there is a slight difference. So would there be more pressure in certain circumstances than in? But maybe no responsibility, but maybe more pressure.
It's a really good analogy, and that's one thing that changes when you retire is you realise time moves a bit more slowly, right? Because as rugby players, as referees, there's always a game next week. You're back into the training week, and it's it's game after game, isn't it? Life moves quickly when you're playing professional sport, and then you come out of it, and time just moves a little bit slower. You've got time to do things, and it's similar in as a doctor. Obviously, there are specialties. You mentioned surgery, A&E certainly when you've got severely, acutely unwell patients, where you probably have to make that decision making a bit quicker. But yeah, you're right. You've got time. You think you might not have, but you do have time to make sure you get the decision making right. And you know, certainly from my experiences, there's always someone senior at hand, and it's a learning curve, isn't it? You think back to your days when you were a junior referee. You know, you're always trying to.
I was
a
resident
referee. Always trying to take things from you know, other people's decision making situations. You know, certainly in my line of work, patients with certain conditions. How is that managed? Okay, I've learned that. I've seen it now. So next time that happens, I can appreciate that was the treatment pathway. So, you know, it's a lifelong learning commitment. Medicine. You can never know it all, right? That's why there's specialties. You can never know everything about every specialty, right? So
will that be the next step for you then? So you're sort of learning sort of broadly now about things, aren't you? And then the next step, if you want to specialise in something, is it something you fancy specialising in?
Yeah, well, we'll see. I'm your foundation training, so your 2 years, you have 6 4-month rotations over those 2 years. So I'm in a surgical job next, colorectal surgery. So that'll be different. I've been care of the elderly, geriatric medicine first up, which has been interesting. And every specialty brings with it something a bit different, right? So, you know, the pressures are different, the sort of patients are seeing are different. So you have that taste of 6 different specialties, and in that you see lots of different patients. And then after that foundation training, you know, the main training routes take one of 3 ways. So GP training, surgical training, or medical training. So you've got hospital doctors, the physicians, that's what you go into in many different specialties. Surgery, i.e. the doing, you know, you go for an operation, the surgeons, or you go see a GP, right? So those are the main 3 routes. There are lots of other things in between them, but yeah, I'm not quite sure yet. I don't want to commit too early. I'm quite keen to experience different things and not form my plan too early. Because there might be something I love the idea of now, and I kind of pin my hopes to that, and actually don't enjoy it too much. So I want to get a taste of it.
With every job that becomes a pressure job, there are always highs and always lows. So I don't think you would have had much lows in your rugby career, because you're very, very successful rugby. Obviously, there are games where you're maybe not your best, same as a referee, and you've had to pick yourself up. Maybe 2011 World Cup, you know, so
I've lost some big games. They were lows.
Were they?
Yeah.
And because of, and maybe nothing personally, it is just the fact that the team lost.
I think you realise that chance may never come again.
Like the World Cup 2011?
Yeah, World Cup 2011 hurts, mate.
I'm still convinced. I was there watching that. Myself, Bryce Lawrence, a couple of referees were there watching that. And I always say this, if you would have gone to that final, I think you would have won it, because New Zealand had the weight of the whole country on their shoulder. France should have won that final, to be honest. Yeah. They were very unlucky to... Well, New Zealand won it, so deserve credit to them, but France were really, really unlucky. And I just wonder if you'd have gone to that final, I suppose that makes you feel worse.
Yeah, exactly. But it's that game sticks with me, actually. Obviously, the Lions of South Africa 09 and that Mornay-Staying kick, you know, penalty shootout, Cardiff, Heineken Cup semi-final, Leicester. You know, I've lost some big games, and they were low, mate. They were really, really tough.
But this is going to make you feel better now, okay? Because, or worse, so 2015, you lost in the quarterfinals with South Africa. Yeah. I did the final. 2009, then you lost to Leicester in Cardiff. I did the final, and to Leicester in Glasgow. Okay. So I'd like to thank you for having those days where you've lost a game, actually, Jimmy, because I've had a couple of games on your back.
That works well. Good work. And then the injuries. I mean, they're low points as well, right? You know, your operations.
Were you injured much?
Yeah, I've had a few, mate. So, you know, reconstructive surgery to ankle, knee, shoulder, wrist, fracture my skull playing as well. So, had some big ones, and they were always low. But you kind of realise it's an occupational hazard. You know, it's a question of when, not if, you're going to get injured as a pro player, right? So, and then the lows as a doctor, obviously around death quite a bit.
What was your first experience?
Whether that's called to seeing dead patients and confirming death, or, you know, arrest calls and, you know, attempting CPR and patients dying. So that's difficult, but it's part of the job.
How do you deal with that then? Has your rugby sort of career sort of helped with that? Or very different?
I'd like to think so. Yeah, you know, I was lucky to travel world with rugby, and I guess I'm a bit more worldly and have more life experience coming into this job than someone straight out of med school, right? At 23, I'm 38, I've got a young family, and you know, I guess that perspective on life is a little bit different. But it's hard. I mean, that, you know, that's happened a few times down the first few months, and you know, you always kind of go home and you have a debrief as a team, and then you go home and have a little kind of debrief with yourself emotionally, and you carry it with you. You carry it with you. You know, I'll never forget those first couple of incidents in my first few months. You know, that is what you sign up for as a doctor. I think it's part and parcel of the job, isn't it?
I think it's quite similar to refereeing, actually, because people ask, how do you deal with the abuse? It's not nice when you get it, but you know that you're going to be doing a job, you're going to get abuse. Some of it is part of the theatre, of the drama of the sport, and you've got to accept that. There's no way I wouldn't want a referee ever in a stadium where nobody can shout at the referee. But there is a line that sometimes gets crossed. And if it's not something in you that's able you to deal with that, no matter how difficult it may be, you could never be a referee. And I guess it's very similar to a doctor. If you're, although those low points of, you know, maybe somebody dying on your watch, you know, you've done all you could, just couldn't save them, coming across those patients who passed away for the first time, you couldn't be a doctor if you weren't able to deal with that in one sense, wouldn't you? No,
I completely agree. And as I said, it's part of the job. I know it's quite cliche, isn't it? But you've got to accept that. I mean, I appreciate we've gone straight to the morbid chat here, but then there is, you know, this huge kind of feelings of satisfaction when you see patients improve, and you know patients thanking you or their family members thanking you, and you know, albeit as a junior or resident, you've played a very small part in that. You haven't made the big decisions, but you've done a lot of the legwork in and around that patient, and they get better. So yeah, it's take the rough with the smooth, as they say. That's part of being a doctor.
When I started refereeing full-time professionally, I was asked by a good friend of mine who was an undertaker, and somebody who was working and was going off ill. He said, oh, can you help me out this afternoon, Nigel? Could you drive the hearse? Because the guy was I said, no, I can't drive the hearse. No, I can't do that. I can't do it. Or I said, will you drive the second mourner's car then? I said, I'll drive the second mourner's car. An old lady had died in Pontyberem. In the second mourner's car were 5 of the grandchildren. It was down the Crem in Narbeth, which is about 45 minutes, 50 minutes drive. I cried all the way down. I cried all the way back because these kids were crying, and I said, don't ever ask me again. I can't do it. So I can referee in front of 85,500 in Twickenham in the biggest game in world rugby with all the pressure it brings 10 years ago, but don't ask me to cry. I get quite emotional. Before I finish off, I'm going to ask you 2 quick questions. Who was your hero as a player? Who do you look up to as a player?
So like I played in the midfield and number 12, so it's hard not to look past someone like Scott Gibbs. You know, I grew up in the generation with Cornell, Howley, Jenkins, Gibbsy. Obviously, Howlers and Jenks ended up coaching me for Wales for a long time, and they were heroes growing up. But my first hero was actually, I used to be a fan of Newport, right, as a kid. My dad was a Newport man, St Julian's season ticket holder for a long time, and used to take us down the terraces of Rodney Parade as a young kid. And I used to play fullback. Before I moved to the midfield, and there's a man called Percy Montgomery who'd signed for Newport as a South African, and he ended up pushing a ref, didn't he?
Yeah, I was reffing the game. I was reffing the game.
So he was a hero of mine.
Peter Rees was touched us behind the post, and down in last year of regional rugby, down in St Helens. It's a hell of a game, a lot going on off the ball. Scott Gibbs and all was playing, was reffing the game. Tried to Swansea, walking back for the conversion, and all like you heard Peter Rees go, Nigel! He's on his backside on the floor. He's pushed me. So I called Percy Montgomery over. He didn't even come to me. Get the red card out. He didn't come. He just ran straight off the field. My last question to you is: your hero as a doctor, is it Ricochet?
No. I love Rick. I love Rick. Great guy. So I think it's the future version of yourself, isn't it? And wanting to, again, quite cliche, but you know, strive to be the best you can be.